Good morning, Europe. It's Friday, the 18th of February. Welcome to the show. Let's take a look at our headlines this hour.
Fears of an impending Russian invasion into Ukraine grow as the US accuses Moscow of identifying targets to attack. Moscow denies the claims. Tensions between the West and Russia remain inflamed after the US's embassy's second-in-command in Moscow has been expelled, as NATO allies accuse Moscow of misleading the world. And America's Vice President Kamala Harris arrives in Munich for a three-day security conference in Bavaria to discuss many security issues, including the Russian-Ukraine crisis.
The US remains firm on accusing Russia of being on the brink of invading Ukraine. American diplomacy accuses Moscow of identifying targets to attack. Russia denies these claims and says the troops deployed in the territories neighboring Ukraine, such as Crimea, will return after the military exercises.
Attempts to place the blame on Russia are futile and baseless, and this only hides the goal of shifting the blame away from Ukraine. I must say that we are very disappointed by the ostrich-like position of our Western colleagues, who are trying not to see obvious things.
Russian planes patrolling in Belarus airspace and the increasing deployment of soldiers in Russian territory are perceived in Ukraine and the West as a threat.
Ukraine remains committed to peaceful resolution of the Russian-Ukrainian conflict by political diplomatic means. Ukraine wants peace, security and stability, not only for itself, but also for the entire Europe. At the same time, I reiterate that in the event of Russia opting for escalation, Ukraine will defend itself.
Ukraine accuses Russian-backed separatists in eastern Ukraine of attacking this kindergarten in Stanisia Luhanska, but separatist authorities in the Luhansk region disputes that claim and blames Ukraine for an increase of shelling along the tense line of contact in the east. However, the attack on the school has not yet been verified by an impartial authority.
NATO allies are accusing Russia of misleading the world by saying it is withdrawing its forces from near Ukraine's borders and some troops have returned to the bases. The situation in the east of Ukraine has only deteriorated over the past hours with the violations of the ceasefire and the shelling of a kindergarten in the town of Stanitsa Luhanska. President Volodymyr Zelensky called it a big provocation, while Western leaders believe Russia could stage a false flag attack to justify the invasion. And this is why Zelensky says it is important to keep diplomats and the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe here in the country, as their monitoring activities are an additional deterrent in the situation, which is far from de-escalating. Sasha Vakulina, Euronews, Kyiv.
Tensions once again flared up between the West and Russia after Moscow expelled the #2 diplomat of the US embassy, stirring fears of a possible invasion of Ukraine. NATO allies have accused Russia of misleading the world by saying it was returning some troops to their bases from the Ukrainian border. Western analysts believe Russia added 7,000 troops to the border in recent days.
I'm worried about the increased number of violations of the ceasefire. I'm also worried for the possibility that Russia is trying to create some kind of pretext, whether this is that or not.
But beyond the concerns and fears, NATO Secretary General left the door open to diplomacy and invited Russia to dialogue with the Western alliance and de-escalate their military tactics.
We should be careful speculating too much about what will happen. We know what has taken place. And that is that Russia has now a force in place that can invade Ukraine with very little or no warning time. We also know that Russia has put forward claims which they know cannot be met, and they have a kind of threatening rhetoric. Most importantly, we are calling Russia to de-escalate and to engage in a diplomatic effort with NATO and NATO allies.
Western powers estimate Russia has over 150,000 troops massed outside Ukraine's borders. And although Moscow denies any possibility of an invasion, it has given few details that would allow for an independent assessment of their alleged troop withdrawal.
They have not moved
Speaking at the White House, President Joe Biden said that the U.S. has reasons to believe that Russia is engaged in a false flag operation to have an excuse to go into Ukraine. Following talks with his Italian counterpart Luigi Di Maio, Kremlin's foreign minister Sergei Lavrov denied a potential invasion. However, the Kremlin demanded the West keep Ukraine and other nations in its sphere of influence out of NATO, halt weapons deployments near Russia, and roll back forces from Eastern Europe. Those demands were swiftly rejected by the NATO allies.
The three-day Munich Security Conference kicks off today in Bavaria, and there's certainly a lot of ground to cover. To no one's surprise, the ongoing crisis at the Ukrainian-Russian border will be one of the key issues at the forum, which will be attended by more than 30 heads of state and government, as well as some 100 top government officials. A notable absence will be Russian President Vladimir Putin or any other high-ranking Russian officials. But meetings between Western allies are planned on the sidelines of the conference. So to give you an idea of what else is on the agenda, you needn't look any further than a report published earlier this week, which sets the tone and agenda for the conference. Its title is Turning the Tide, Unlearning Helplessness. So some of the other risks and challenges to be discussed include growing global inequality, fragile supply chains in the technology sector, the chaotic exit from Afghanistan, as well as a deteriorating security situation in Mali and the rest of the Sahel region. So certainly a very busy 3 days ahead during what is already a tense time. Kate Brady, Euronews, Berlin.
The Portuguese Navy said it rescued the crew of a Panamanian-flagged cargo ship off the Azores in the North Atlantic on Thursday after a fire broke out on board. A spokesman said 22 members of the crew were rescued and taken to a hotel on the islands, but that no one was injured. The Felicity Ace, a vehicle transport vessel, reported the blaze in the ship's hold. Relatives of the missing crew members from a Spanish trawler that sank in stormy waters off Canada on Tuesday have called for rescue efforts to continue. Only 3 of the 24 crew have been pulled out alive. The families told Spain's agriculture minister that calling off the search had added to their anguish. It's Spain's worst fishing tragedy in nearly 40 years. Animal rights campaigners staged a protest ahead of London Fashion Week, calling for the end of the use of feathers in the fashion industry. The campaigners from the group People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals say the practice is cruel to birds and that ducks and geese in particular are often plucked while still alive and feel all the pain of the process.
Russian favourite Kamila Valieva fell twice during her free skate, dropping to 4th place. Her teammates Alexandra Sherbakova and Alexandra Trusova took the gold and silver respectively. Kaori Sakamoto of Japan took the bronze. Defending champion Michelle Gissen of Switzerland won her 2nd straight Olympic title in the Alpine combined race after heavily favoured American Michaela Schifrin once again skied out in the slalom run. Norway won gold in the Nordic combined team competition after overcoming the COVID-related loss of one of their teammates, Jarl Magnus Rieber. Germany won silver for its 6th straight Olympic medal in the event. Japan finished 3rd. Sandra Naisland of Sweden won the women's Olympic ski cross competition in a race where the 3rd place finisher, Fanny Smith of Switzerland, was disqualified for causing Germany's Daniela Mayer to lose balance after Smith moved her ski directly into her line. Canada regained their crown against old foe Team USA in the final game of the women's ice hockey tournament. Finland won the bronze by beating Switzerland a day earlier. On this 13th day of the competition, Norway takes the overall lead with 29 medals, including 14 gold ones. Germany takes 2nd place on the podium with 22 medals, and the US remains 3rd with 21 medals in total.